You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
A chilling psychological horror unfolds inside an old house with a dark legacy. When Ethan Grayson inherits a quiet home in Riverview, he thinks it's a chance to start over. But what begins as sleepless nights and strange noises quickly spirals into something far more sinister. Whispers in the dark, a chair that moves on its own, a door that should never be opened. As Ethan digs deeper, he uncovers a terrifying history of disappearances, doppelgangers, and a presence that isn't just haunting the house, it's becoming him. This is a story about identity, reflection, and the inescapable pull of something waiting just beyond the threshold. If you love slow-burn horror, haunted houses, and stories that crawl under your skin and stay there, subscribe now and hit the bell so you never miss what comes next. The darkness is just beginning, and it's waiting for you. Chapter 1. The Sound in the Dark, Riverview, Maine, 2004. Ethan Grayson wiped the sweat from his forehead and kept his pace steady on the treadmill. The rhythmic slap of his sneakers against the rubber belt was the only sound in the dim basement, aside from the occasional hum of the furnace kicking on. Outside, the autumn wind howled against the house, rattling the old windows. He glanced at the digital clock on the wall, 12:41 a.m. Too late, but he hadn't been able to sleep. He rarely could anymore. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that felt heavy, like something was waiting inside it. His thoughts drifted, back to the classroom, the lesson plan still unwritten, the stack of essays sitting on his kitchen table. Then further back, to things he didn't like to think about. The things that kept him running, night after night, until exhaustion forced his body to shut down. The thump came softly at first. A muffled, distant sound, just on the edge of his hearing. Ethan slowed his pace, his mind instinctively dismissing it. Old house, shifting wood, the wind, then it came again. Thump, louder this time, more deliberate. He cut the treadmill and stepped off, the silence in the wake of his heavy breathing making the sound seem even sharper. Thump, thump, thump. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the house settling, it was rhythmic, like footsteps, directly above him. Ethan swallowed, pulse thudding against his ribs. The dining room was right above the basement. The dining room where he always sat alone. The dining room where, for some reason, he never turned his back on the hallway. He turned his head toward the basement stairs. The door at the top was closed, just like he had left it. But what if it hadn't been? The house was locked. He was sure of it. Thump, thump. The sound shifted, moving toward the kitchen, a deliberate, steady pace. Ethan forced himself to move, gripping the wooden handrail as he ascended the stairs. His breathing felt too loud in the confined space. Every creak of the wood beneath his feet made him flinch. He reached the top and hesitated. His hand hovered over the doorknob. A long pause. Then silence. Whatever had been moving had stopped. The quiet was worse. Ethan turned the knob and pushed the door open. A sliver of golden light from the kitchen spilled into the hallway, casting long shadows along the hardwood floor. His heart pounded against his ribs as he stepped forward. The kitchen light flickered. A single bulb, swaying slightly from the ceiling fixture. He swallowed hard. His gaze moved to the front door, still bolted shut. Nothing out of place, nothing wrong. But he could feel it. Something was here. His skin prickled as he moved down the hallway toward the dining room. The air felt heavy, thick, charged with something he couldn't name. He reached the entrance and hesitated. The overhead chandelier cast dim light over the table, illuminating the empty chairs. Everything was as it should be, except for one thing. The chair at the head of the table was slightly pulled back, like someone had just been sitting there. Ethan stared. The room was empty. But he felt something in his bones, in the back of his skull, like the sensation of being watched, a whisper of movement. His breath caught. He turned his head sharply, expecting to see nothing. His hands clenched into fists, a bitter taste rising in his throat. It's nothing. You're exhausted. You're imagining things. Then he saw it. The blinking red light on his answering machine. New message. His stomach tightened. He stepped forward and pressed the button. Static crackled through the speaker. Then, thump. Ethan's breath hitched. Thump, thump, thump. A rhythmic pounding sound, distorted, distant, but unmistakable. It was the same sound he had heard from the basement, the same pattern. The message ended abruptly. A click. Silence. Ethan stood frozen, his body rigid with something close to terror. Then, the kitchen light flickered again, and the chair at the head of the table moved. Just an inch, but enough. His body locked up as ice crawled through his veins. He stepped back, heart hammering against his ribs. The silence stretched. The chair sat still again. His breath came fast and ragged as he backed toward the hallway. His foot hit the edge of the rug and he stumbled, catching himself against the wall. He needed to leave. Now. But before he could move, the answering machine beeped again. A second message. Ethan's stomach churned as the machine whirred, clicking into playback mode. And then, a sound. A breath. Not his. Then a whisper. A single word. His name. Ethan. The line went dead. Ethan's chest tightened. He staggered back, his pulse screaming in his ears. He turned, bolted down the hallway, and fled into his bedroom, slamming the door shut behind him. His breaths came in quick, ragged gasps. He pressed his back against the wood, gripping the knob as if something might try to turn it from the other side. The house was quiet again, but Ethan knew he wasn't alone. Chapter 2. The Empty Room. Ethan barely slept. Even after locking his bedroom door and turning on every light, sleep refused to come. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the darkened hallway beyond the open bathroom door. Every creak of the old house set his nerves on edge. The message on the answering machine replayed in his mind over and over. Thump, 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 thump. His name. His throat was dry. His body tense. The silence around him was thick, suffocating. He wanted to tell himself it was nothing, that exhaustion was making him hallucinate. But deep in his gut, he knew that wasn't true. Something had been there, and worse, it knew him. The sun was barely rising when Ethan finally pushed himself off the bed. His limbs ached from the tension that had settled into his muscles overnight. He rubbed his face, willing himself to think rationally. Check the house. Look for signs of anything out of place. Explain this. He cracked the bedroom door and peered into the hallway. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains in the living room, casting long beams of gold across the hardwood floors. The house felt normal again, like it always did during the day, like last night had never happened. But Ethan knew better. Slowly, he walked toward the dining room, heart pounding, the chair, the message, the thing he had glimpsed. He needed to know if any of it was real. He turned the corner into the dining room and froze. The chair at the head of the table was pushed in, his stomach clenched. Last night it had been pulled out. He had seen it move. He stepped closer, reaching out to touch the worn wooden surface. It was solid beneath his fingertips, real. But the movement, it shouldn't have happened. His gaze flicked toward the answering machine. The red light was off. The messages gone. Ethan exhaled sharply, stepping back. No, that wasn't possible. He had heard them. He had played them. He pressed the playback button. The machine beeped, then nothing. No messages, no evidence. His pulse quickened. His body felt light, unsteady. Did I dream it? No, he hadn't. He knew he hadn't. Something was wrong. A sharp knock at the front door made him flinch. Ethan turned toward the sound, his skin prickling. For a long moment he didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the door. His mind raced with possibilities. Who would be here this early? Another knock. Louder this time. Swallowing hard, Ethan moved toward the door and hesitated before pulling it open. Noah Caldwell stood on the porch, hands tucked into the pockets of his fleece-lined jacket, looking at him with mild concern. "Jesus, Ethan, you look like hell." Ethan let out a shaky breath, rubbing his face. "Yeah, rough night." Noah quirked a brow. "Mind if I come in?" Ethan hesitated. A part of him didn't want to let anyone into the house. Not yet. Not while the air still felt heavy with whatever had happened last night. But he nodded, stepping aside. Noah walked in, glancing around. "Man, this place always creeped me out a little." Ethan shut the door behind him. "Yeah?" Noah shrugged. "I don't know. It's just got that old house vibe. Feels like it should have ghosts." Ethan's stomach twisted. He moved toward the kitchen, needing the normalcy of making coffee. "You came by early. What's up?" Noah leaned against the counter. "Thought I'd check in on you. You've been kind of distant lately. Figured I'd see if you were alive." He smirked. "Barely looks like it." Ethan exhaled. "Yeah, didn't sleep much." Noah studied him. "Something happen?" Ethan hesitated. He wanted to tell him. He needed to tell someone, but saying it out loud made it real, and without proof he'd sound insane. So he shook his head. "Nah, just restless." Noah didn't look convinced, but he didn't press. Ethan poured them both coffee, and for a while they just sat at the small kitchen table, talking about nothing. Work, the town, the usual. The mundane chatter helped, made things feel normal again, until Noah glanced toward the dining room. "You ever feel weird in here?" Ethan's grip on his coffee tightened. "What do you mean?" Noah shrugged. I don't know. I remember when we were kids I always hated this room. Gave me the creeps, like something was watching." He let out a short laugh. "Maybe I'm just remembering how your old man used to yell at us when we messed with his stuff." Ethan forced a chuckle. "Yeah, maybe." He didn't tell Noah that he still felt it. The presence, the watching, the waiting. Noah's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and sighed. "Shit, I gotta go. Library meeting." Ethan nodded, almost relieved. As much as he appreciated Noah's company, he needed to be alone to process everything. Noah stood, stretching. "Hey, you should come by the library later. I've been digging up some town history and there's some weird stuff about this place." Ethan frowned. "Weird how?" Noah grinned. "I'll show you. It's cool. You'll like it." Ethan forced a nod, even as something deep in his gut churned. "Yeah, maybe I will." They said their goodbyes and Ethan shut the door behind him. The house was silent again. He turned back toward the dining room. The chair was still pushed in. The answering machine still had no messages. But when he stepped forward, a chill slithered down his spine. The overhead chandelier was swaying, just slightly, as if someone had brushed past it. Ethan's breath caught. He slowly backed away, every nerve in his body screaming at him to leave, to get out. But he didn't. Instead, he grabbed his keys and jacket, yanked open the front door, and stepped out into the fresh autumn air. He needed answers. And if Noah had found something, anything about this house's past, Ethan was damn sure going to find out. Because something was wrong. And he wasn't crazy. Chapter 3. The Town That Hides Its Past. Ethan had been coming to the Riverview Library since he was a kid, but today it felt different. The building was old, older than most places in town. The dark oak shelves stretched from wall to wall, the scent of yellowed pages thick in the air. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, painting the hardwood floors in golden streaks. But there was something else. A weight, as if the very foundation of the building knew the secrets it held. Noah Caldwell was waiting for him near the reference desk, flipping through a thick, worn book. He looked up as Ethan approached and smirked. "Didn't think you'd actually come." Ethan forced a half-smile. "Yeah, well, you said you had something." Noah nodded and motioned for him to follow. They weaved past the main reading area and through an old iron gate that led down a narrow staircase into the archives. The air grew colder with every step, the scent of dust and aged paper settling heavy in Ethan's lungs. He hated basements. The archive room was lit by a single flickering bulb. A long wooden table sat in the center, covered in old newspaper clippings, manila folders, and scattered books. A box labeled Grayson House sat open, files spilling out. Noah pulled out a chair and gestured for Ethan to sit. "All right, so you said something weird was going on at your place. I figured I'd do some digging." He tapped the box. "Turns out your house has some history." Ethan's stomach tightened. He already knew that much. He had felt it. Noah slid a brittle newspaper clipping toward him. "Start here." Ethan picked it up. "Local man missing, last seen in his home. October 5th, 1977. A grainy black-and-white photo accompanied the article. A man in his late 40s, thick-rimmed glasses, a sharp nose, a serious expression. James Holloway. Ethan skimmed the text. Holloway was last seen by a co-worker on the evening of October 4th, 1977. The following morning his front door was found unlocked, with no signs of forced entry or struggle. Authorities searched the premises but found no evidence of foul play. His dinner was still on the table, his chair slightly pulled back. His whereabouts remain unknown. Ethan's blood ran cold. His chair had been pulled back last night. A chill crawled up his spine. He flipped through the stack of clippings. Another article, 1951. Another disappearance, Margaret Lowe. Then 1923. Then 1895. The same house, the same story. Vanished. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. Just gone. Ethan swallowed hard. You're telling me this has happened before? Noah nodded grimly. More times than the town would like to admit. Ethan shook his head. But I've lived there for years. Nothing's ever happened. Noah hesitated. Yeah, but... He pulled out another folder, opening it to a black and white photograph. Check this out. Ethan looked at the image. It was an old family dinner scene, a wooden table, 3 people seated around it. The image was grainy, but the figures were clear enough. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The man at the head of the table. He looked exactly like Ethan. A perfect match. The hair, the shape of his face, even the way he sat, his posture, his expression, was eerily familiar. Ethan's hands clenched around the photo. Who is this? Noah exhaled. Samuel Grayson, lived in your house in 1932. The name sent a sharp, cold pressure through Ethan's chest. Grayson, his family. The realization made his head swim. He flipped the photo over. On the back, written in elegant script, was a date, October 5th, 1932. The same date James Holloway disappeared. Ethan's stomach churned. He turned the photo back over, studying every inch of it. The old wallpaper, the worn tablecloth, he recognized them. They were still in his house. Nothing had changed. Except something shifted in his gut. There was a shadow behind the man at the head of the table. Faint, unclear, but unmistakable. Tall, thin, watching. Ethan's grip tightened, a pulse of nausea rolling through him. He shoved the photo back at Noah. What the hell is this? Noah studied him. I was hoping you'd tell me. Ethan leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. His thoughts swirled. Was this why he had felt drawn back to Riverview? Was the house always meant for him? His father never spoke much about their family history. He had never mentioned a Samuel Grayson. Had he known? Had he been trying to protect him? Ethan swallowed the rising panic in his throat. Noah, this isn't just some weird history lesson. Something's happening in that house. He hesitated. Something I don't think I can explain. Noah frowned. What do you mean? Ethan opened his mouth, then froze. Thump. The sound came from above them. Both men stiffened. Noah's eyes flicked toward the ceiling. Tell me that was the front door. Ethan didn't answer, because he knew exactly where they were standing, directly beneath the dining room. Silence. Then, thump. Louder. Closer. Ethan shot to his feet. We need to go. Noah didn't argue. They bolted up the stairs, bursting into the main reading area. A few people glanced up, startled by their sudden movement. The librarian at the front desk gave them a confused look. But nothing was out of place. The sound was gone. Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing his face. Jesus Christ! Noah's face was pale. That wasn't the wind, man. Ethan nodded, throat dry. I know. For a moment they just stood there. The world outside the library was normal. People walking down Main Street, the distant sound of traffic. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed them up from the basement. That whatever had been in the house last night wasn't staying there anymore. Noah let out a long breath. All right, so what the hell do we do? Ethan turned toward the library doors. He already knew the answer. I need to go back. Chapter 4, The Thumping Never Stops. Ethan stood outside his house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles ached. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and Riverview was settling into its usual nighttime quiet. A few porch lights flickered on down the street, but most houses were dark. His own house sat at the edge of the neighborhood, isolated, waiting. A part of him wanted to turn around, to drive somewhere, anywhere else. But deep down, he knew there was no running from this. Whatever was happening, it wasn't going to stop on its own. He exhaled, pushing the car door open. Gravel crunched beneath his boots as he stepped toward the front porch. The air was colder than it should have been. The house felt aware. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, flipping on the hallway light. It flickered once before holding steady. The silence was thick, pressing against his ears. Nothing was out of place. At least, not yet. Ethan moved quickly, setting his bag on the kitchen counter. Inside, he had everything he needed. A small video camera, a voice recorder, and an old Polaroid camera he found buried in the back of his closet. He wasn't crazy. He couldn't be crazy. Tonight he was getting proof. 11:43 p.m. Ethan sat in the living room, his laptop open, the live feed from his video camera displayed on the screen. The camera sat on the dining room table, pointed toward the head chair, the one that had moved on its own. The house was quiet, but it wouldn't stay that way. The air felt thick, like a storm was about to break. Ethan checked the time, 11:58 p.m. His pulse quickened, 12:12 a.m. The first sound was soft, a creak, a distant shift in the floorboards. Ethan tensed, eyes locked on the laptop screen. The dining room remained still. Then, thump. A low, heavy sound, not from the video feed, from above him. He turned sharply toward the ceiling, his bedroom. The sound had come from his bedroom. A chill crawled over his skin. Then, thump. This time, closer. His stomach twisted. The footage still showed nothing, but the sound was inside the house now. Moving, coming down the hall. Ethan swallowed hard and reached for the Polaroid camera. His fingers were trembling, but he lifted it, aimed it at the dining room and pressed the shutter. Click. The film ejected with a soft whir. He placed it on the table, eyes flicking back to the screen. Thump. It was closer. His breath caught in his throat as the chair in the video feed shifted. Just an inch. But he saw it. He saw it move. A cold sweat broke out along the back of his neck. His laptop screen glitched. The video feed stuttered, black lines cutting across the image. And for a split second a shadow, standing at the head of the table, then gone. The footage returned to normal. The chair was still. The house was silent. Ethan forced himself to move, grabbing the Polaroid. The film was still developing, the image blurry, but something was wrong. His hand tightened. The chair was empty, but the head of the table wasn't. There was a shape, faint but visible, a dark, stretched figure leaning over the chair, watching, waiting. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. He felt a sudden shift in the air, like something moved behind him. He turned fast. Nothing. But the house was wrong now. The space around him felt smaller, like the walls were pressing inward. He could feel eyes on him, pressing against his skin. Then from the darkness of the hallway, a whisper, low, ragged, not words, just breath. Ethan backed away. His instincts screamed at him to run, to get the hell out, but his legs wouldn't move. The whisper grew louder, closer. He grabbed the voice recorder and hit playback. At first only silence, then a sound, faint, distorted, a heartbeat, his heartbeat, then a voice. His own voice, whispering, "It's time." Ethan dropped the recorder. The sound of the impact echoed through the house. The whispering stopped. The air was still. Then, thump, directly behind him. Ethan turned, breath caught in his throat. The dining chair at the head of the table slid back, on its own, inviting him. His body locked up in terror, but deep in his chest something pulled at him. Sit. The thought whispered through his skull, but it wasn't his own. Sit down. His knees buckled. His mind screamed no, but his body wasn't listening. Then his phone rang. The shrill tone shattered the spell. Ethan gasped, staggering backward, heart pounding. He grabbed the phone, his hands shaking. No caller ID. He hesitated, then answered, static. Then a voice, soft, familiar, his own. Ethan. The line went dead. The house exhaled. The pressure lifted just enough for Ethan to move again. His fingers fumbled to shut off the recording. He grabbed his laptop, camera, everything, and bolted for the door. He didn't stop running until he was in his car, gasping for breath, staring back at the darkened windows of the house. Nothing moved, but the weight of something watching pressed against him. Inside, the thumping continued, slow, steady, as if the house itself had a heartbeat. Chapter 5. The First Disappearance. Ethan didn't go back to the house that night. Instead, he parked in front of an all-night diner on the edge of town, hands still shaking as he scrolled through the images on his laptop. The footage was normal again, except for the brief moment of distortion where the shadowed figure appeared at the head of the table. He flipped through the Polaroid photos. His breath hitched. The figure was still there, faint, but present. His stomach churned. It wasn't a camera glitch. It wasn't his imagination. It was real. The house wanted him. And if the records Noah found were right, it had wanted others before. The Riverview Historical Society was tucked between a pawn shop and an abandoned bookstore. The sign above the door was faded, the windows dusty, as if no one had stepped inside in years. Ethan pushed the door open, the bell jingling overhead. Dr. Lillian Park sat behind the front desk, adjusting her glasses as she looked up from a stack of old newspapers. Late 50s, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. She had been Riverview's historian for years, but Ethan had only spoken to her once, years ago, during a school research project. Now she was his only chance at answers. She studied him for a moment before raising an eyebrow. "Ethan Grayson, haven't seen you in a long time." Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. "Yeah, listen, I need your help." Lillian motioned toward a chair. "That much is obvious. Sit down. What's going on?" Ethan hesitated, then pulled the photo of Samuel Grayson from his jacket pocket and slid it across the desk. Lillian picked it up, adjusting her glasses. Her brow furrowed. "Where did you get this?" "The library archives," Ethan said. "Noah Caldwell found it. Said this man, Samuel Grayson, lived in my house." Lillian nodded slowly. "He did. Briefly." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What happened to him?" Lillian didn't answer right away. She pulled a worn leather notebook from beneath her desk, flipping through the pages. "The Grayson house," she muttered, stopping on a page filled with handwritten notes. "I remember looking into this once." Ethan leaned forward. "Tell me." Lillian's lips pressed into a thin line. "The house has a history." "I know that," Ethan said. "The disappearances, Holloway, Margaret Lowe, the others. But no one talks about it. Why?" Lillian sighed, tapping a finger against the photograph. "Because people in Riverview forget, or they choose to." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Lillian glanced up at him. "You said you found this in the archives?" "Yeah," she nodded. "And did you find any missing persons cases from before 1895? Ethan hesitated. "No." Lillian slid the notebook toward him. "Because there aren't any." Ethan's stomach tightened. "That doesn't make sense. There's no way nothing happened before then." Lillian's gaze was steady. "Oh, something happened, but there's no record of it." Ethan's mouth went dry. "You're saying the records were erased?" Lillian leaned back. "Or never kept in the first place?" Ethan stared at her. For the first time, it truly hit him. It wasn't just that people had disappeared. The town itself had buried the truth. Ethan swallowed hard. "Why?" Lillian hesitated. "Because it always happens the same way." She flipped a few pages in her notebook, stopping on a section marked 1895, the Red Door incident. Ethan's breath caught. The Red Door, the one in his basement. Lillian glanced up at him. Samuel Grayson was the first recorded disappearance, but it didn't start with him. Ethan's pulse pounded. "Then who?" Lillian exhaled. "His father." Ethan's body went cold. He had never heard of Samuel's father, not in any record. And if what Lillian was saying was true, it was because there was no record. Ethan leaned forward. "Tell me everything." Lillian's eyes darkened. "I will, but first." She hesitated. "You need to tell me exactly what's been happening in that house." Ethan told her everything. The thumping, the whispers, the messages that disappeared, the chair at the table. By the time he finished, Lillian had gone pale. "This isn't good," she murmured. "No shit," Ethan muttered, rubbing his face. Lillian stood abruptly. "Come with me." Ethan followed as she led him toward the back of the Historical Society building. A series of filing cabinets lined the walls, filled with brittle papers and forgotten history. She pulled open a drawer labelled 1890-1900 and sifted through the folders. After a moment, she pulled out a small leather-bound book. She handed it to Ethan. He turned it over in his hands. The leather was cracked, the pages yellowed. The name on the front had nearly faded away. But the first letter was still visible. Ethan's breath caught. "His journal," Lillian said. "Samuel Grayson's father, the last thing he wrote before he vanished." Ethan's fingers trembled as he opened the book. The handwriting was messy, frantic. The first few pages were normal, then the last entry. The ink was smudged, as if the writer's hands had been shaking. Ethan read aloud, "The thumping is inside me now. It follows, watches, waits. I found the door, but I should never have opened it. I see it in the mirror now. I see him. He looks like me, but it's not me." Ethan's stomach twisted. Lillian pointed to the bottom of the page. "Look." Ethan's eyes dropped to the final sentence. 4 words, scrawled in dark ink, as if they'd been written with the last strength the writer had. "It's time to go." Ethan's blood ran cold. His vision swam. His chest tightened, because he had heard those words before, on his voice recorder, in his own voice. Lillian's face was grave. "Ethan, listen to me." He barely registered her voice. His mind was spinning, because it wasn't just happening again. It had always been happening, and he was next. Chapter 6, The Thing That Watches. The house felt different when Ethan stepped inside. Not just cold, not just quiet, different. Like a pulse had been growing beneath the walls, a slow and steady heartbeat waiting for him to return. His breath was shallow as he shut the door behind him. The weight of the journal in his hand felt unbearable. The thumping is inside me now. Ethan swallowed hard, stepping further into the house. The air was thick, too still. The kind of silence that wasn't just absence of sound, but something watching, waiting. His eyes flicked toward the dining room. The chair at the head of the table was pushed out again. His stomach twisted. He had tucked it under the table before he left. Ethan exhaled sharply. He didn't have the energy to deal with this tonight. He placed the journal on the kitchen counter and walked past the dining room, into the hallway. He needed sleep. He needed his mind to stop spinning. He needed... Click. The lamp beside him flickered, once, then twice, then darkness. Ethan froze. His breath was the only sound in the house. Then, from the direction of the dining room, creak, slow, deliberate, like the weight of something shifting. His chest tightened, his feet refused to move. Don't look. The thoughts screamed in his mind, but he couldn't stop himself. His head turned toward the darkness of the dining room. And then he saw it. A shadow. Not cast by light, not an absence of it. Something else. It sat at the head of the table. Its form was vague, shifting, its limbs too long, its head tilted slightly, watching him. Ethan's body locked. His skin went ice cold. It was just sitting there, waiting. Then it moved. Not like a living thing, not like a person, like something that didn't fully understand movement. Its head tilted the other way. Its neck stretched just a little too far. Ethan's fingers dug into his palms. The thumping started again. Soft, slow. But this time, it wasn't coming from the walls. It was inside him, deep in his chest. A dull, rhythmic pulse, like an echo of something else. Something trying to match his heartbeat. His body locked up. His lungs felt tight, like something was pressing down on him, matching his breath, sinking with him, becoming him. The shadow twitched. Ethan's vision swam. His knees buckled. He stumbled back, breaking eye contact, gasping for breath. His fingers clawed at the wall for support. The house groaned around him. Then everything stopped. The pressure lifted. The air shifted. The lights flickered back on. Ethan sucked in a ragged breath. His pulse hammered in his ears. His gaze darted back toward the dining room. The shadow was gone. The chair was empty, as if nothing had ever been there at all. Ethan staggered backward, gripping the doorframe to steady himself. His stomach churned with nausea. His chest still ached, like something had been inside him, like something had tried to replace him. Ethan forced himself to move. He stumbled into the bathroom. Gripping the edges of the sink, his reflection stared back at him, pale, sweat-drenched, his eyes wild. He braced himself, took a deep breath. Then the mirror flickered. His reflection didn't. Ethan's heart stopped. His own face was still staring at him, but his body had moved. He staggered back in horror. The reflection smiled, not a natural smile, a twisted, too wide grin. And then it spoke, not with words, with a single slow thump against the glass. Ethan choked back a scream and bolted from the bathroom. His body trembled as he crashed into the hallway, his mind reeling, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. This isn't real. But it was. Because when he reached the kitchen, the journal was open, a new page. The ink was fresh, as if someone had just written in it. His blood turned to ice, because the message was in his own handwriting. 4 words. You shouldn't have looked. Ethan's breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. His own writing, his own hand. But he hadn't written it. His knees nearly gave out. He grabbed the edges of the counter, forcing himself to stay upright. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, a sound. Something worse. A faint whisper. His voice, coming from his own bedroom. Ethan's stomach twisted into knots. His entire body screamed for him to leave, but something pulled at him, a presence, a weight. As if something inside the house had finally decided it was time. Chapter 7, The Red Door. The whispering didn't stop. Ethan stood frozen in the kitchen, his breath shallow, his body locked in place. The sound drifted from down the hallway, from his bedroom. His own voice, soft, low, almost a hum. But it wasn't him. He knew that. He knew because his chest still ached from whatever had tried to crawl inside him. He knew because his reflection had smiled without him. He knew because his handwriting had appeared in the journal without ever touching it. And now it was calling him. His fingers curled against the countertop, his pulse slammed against his ribs. Every instinct told him to run, to leave. But something pulled at him, not just curiosity. Something deeper, something inside him now. The whispering stopped, silence settled over the house like a heavy blanket. And then, thump. Ethan sucked in a sharp breath. Thump, louder this time. Not from the hallway, not from his bedroom, from below. His stomach turned. He knew where it was coming from. The basement. The red door. Ethan swallowed hard. His hands were shaking as he grabbed the Polaroid camera from the counter. His body was screaming at him not to do this. But it didn't matter. He was already moving. The air was heavy as Ethan reached the basement door. The light above him flickered. The wood beneath his bare feet felt colder than it should. He didn't remember taking off his shoes. His fingers hovered over the doorknob. For a split second, he thought, if I don't open it, it won't be real. But it was, and he had already been chosen. The knob felt warm, almost alive. He twisted it. The door creaked open. The basement stairs stretched down into the dark. The faint glow of the single overhead bulb cast deep, sharp shadows along the cement walls. Ethan exhaled slowly, stepping down. 1 step. The air grew thicker. 2 steps. The hairs on his arms rose. 3. His pulse slowed. His vision swam. By the time he reached the bottom, it felt like the house had exhaled. His lungs felt too tight, his limbs too heavy. And then he saw it. The red door. It was exactly as he remembered it. The wood was dark, almost black, symbols carved deep into the surface, old and worn, their meaning lost to time. The handle was rusted but clean, as if it had been used recently. Ethan's breath came slow and uneven. He lifted the Polaroid and snapped a photo. Click, whir. The film ejected with a soft hum. He set it on the nearby workbench, eyes locked on the door. The thumping was louder now, not from behind it, from inside him, his own heartbeat. Echoing, sinking. The red door wanted him to open it. Ethan swallowed hard. His fingers hovered over the handle. Then something moved behind him, a faint, whisper-soft shuffle. Ethan went rigid. The air shifted. His pulse pounded in his ears. He turned slowly. The basement was empty, but he could feel it. Something was here. Something was watching. His gaze dropped to the Polaroid. It had finished developing. Ethan picked it up, breath shaky, and when he saw what was in the photo, his stomach dropped, because he was in it. Standing in front of the red door, except his back was turned, like he had already opened it, like he was already inside. And in the background, a figure, tall, thin, standing at the top of the stairs. Looking down at him, Ethan's breath caught. His heart slammed against his ribs. He spun toward the steps, but there was nothing there, only empty space. And then the doorknob turned. Ethan whipped back around. The red door was opening. A sliver of darkness spilled from the crack. Not just an absence of light. Something else. Something waiting. Ethan took a step back, his legs weak, his mind screaming, no, no, no. The door creaked wider, and from the darkness, a hand, not reaching for him, but for the light. As if whatever was inside had been waiting to be let out. Ethan turned and ran. His feet barely touched the stairs as he bolted upward, lungs burning, heart slamming against his ribs. The air behind him felt wrong, thick, heavy, closer. He reached the top of the stairs, nearly throwing himself through the door, slamming it shut behind him. The house was silent. The basement, dark. Ethan gasped for air, pressing his back against the wall, his hands shaking violently, his vision blurred, his chest ached, and then the thumping started again. Not from the basement, not from inside him, from upstairs. Ethan's entire body went cold, because it wasn't just footsteps, it was the sound of something pacing in his bedroom. And then a soft, creaking sound, like someone sitting down, into a chair, waiting for him. Chapter 8, The Forgotten Name. Ethan didn't sleep. After the basement, after the red door, he couldn't. He sat in the living room, arms wrapped around himself, the Polaroid still clutched in his shaking fingers. The image hadn't changed. Him, standing in front of the red door, his back turned, and the figure at the top of the stairs. The pacing upstairs had stopped an hour ago, but that was somehow worse, because now the house was waiting. Something inside him knew. If he went up there, he wouldn't come back down. His mind screamed for him to leave, but it wouldn't matter. The house was inside him now, and he was inside it. Dr. Lillian Park studied Ethan carefully, her eyes flicking between his pale face and the Polaroid he had laid out on her desk. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks," she said finally. Ethan swallowed. Feels like it. Lillian turned the photo over in her hands. This isn't a trick of the light. No, she sighed, rubbing the bridge of her nose. And the red door? Ethan nodded slowly. I didn't open it, but it opened for me. Lillian's face tightened. That's not good. Ethan let out a humorless laugh. No kidding. Lillian pulled a thick book from a stack beside her, flipping through the pages. I spent last night looking into something Noah mentioned, the Grayson name. I knew I had heard it before. She stopped on a page and turned the book toward Ethan. It was a family tree, and there, near the bottom, Samuel Grayson. Ethan's breath hitched. His ancestor, the one who had disappeared in 1932. But his father's name was missing. Ethan frowned. That's weird. Why isn't his name here? Lillian met his eyes. Because he was erased. Ethan stiffened. Lillian continued, voice quiet. There was another child in the Grayson family. Samuel wasn't an only son. He had a brother, a younger one. But there's no record of him, no birth certificate, no census listing. It's like he was wiped from history. Ethan's stomach churned. Something inside him clicked. He had never known much about his father's family. His dad never spoke about them. And now it was clear why. Lillian tapped the page. I think this missing brother was your great-grandfather. Ethan's mouth was dry. That doesn't make sense. How can someone just vanish from history? Lillian's gaze darkened. I don't know, but whatever is in that house, it's been taking Graysons for over a century. Ethan's body locked up, because if that was true, then he was never meant to leave. The house had always been waiting for him. Lillian leaned forward. Ethan, you said the door opened for you. He nodded slowly. She hesitated. Did you hear anything? A memory crashed over him like ice water, the whispering, not words, just breath. But there was something else. A name. He hadn't realized it last night, but now he could almost remember it. It had called to him. Lillian's voice broke the silence. Think, Ethan. What did it say? His head ached, his chest felt tight. The name sat on the edge of his mind. Just out of reach. His fingers curled into fists. I don't. Then, clear as day, the whisper returned. A single word, Ethan. The air shifted. The room suddenly felt too small. Lillian frowned. Are you all right? Ethan's breath came fast, uneven. The whisper wasn't from his memory. It was here. Now. A shiver rolled down his spine. And then, from behind him, a soft, deliberate thump. Lillian's expression changed instantly. Ethan, don't turn around. His body locked. His breathing was ragged, his hands clammy. The Polaroid slid off the desk on its own. Thump. Closer. Ethan's stomach twisted. Lillian stood. She grabbed something from the desk drawer, an old heavy iron key, and pressed it into Ethan's shaking hand. Her voice was firm, urgent. You need to open the red door. Ethan's head snapped up. What? No, that's the last thing I should do. Lillian's grip tightened. That thing in your house, it's part of you now, and if you don't open that door on your own... Her gaze flicked over his shoulder just for a second. Her lips parted. Ethan saw fear. Real. Genuine. Something was behind him. She whispered, Then it's going to open you. Thump, right next to his ear. Ethan bolted. Ethan's car screeched into the driveway. His heart was racing. His breath came in short, shallow bursts. The house stood silent, waiting. The key was still clenched in his fist. The weight of it felt wrong, too heavy, like it had been waiting for him for a long, long time. Ethan stepped onto the porch. His pulse pounded in his ears. His own voice whispered in his head, It's time to go. He unlocked the door, stepped inside. The air was thick, the silence alive. The house was breathing with him. He turned toward the basement door. It was already open. The red door was waiting. Ethan gripped the key tighter. This time, he was going through it. Chapter 9. The thumping is inside. Ethan stood at the threshold of the basement, the key cold in his palm. The red door was waiting. It looked the same as before. Dark wood, deep carved symbols, rusted handle. But something about it felt different now, like it was breathing. The air around it pulsed. The space behind it felt impossibly deep. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. This was it. He stepped forward. His fingers wrapped around the handle. The moment he touched it, the thumping started again. Not from behind the door, from inside him. His breath hitched. His heartbeat no longer felt like his own. It felt like something else, something matching him. Sinking. Becoming. Ethan clenched his jaw, his grip tightening around the handle. He would not run. Not now. Not after everything. He lifted the key, slid it into the lock, turned. Click. The door groaned open. Darkness. Not just absence of light, something worse, something waiting. Ethan stepped inside. The second his foot crossed the threshold, the air changed. The sound of the house faded, the weight in his chest intensified. The space was impossible. The basement had been small, confined, but beyond the door it stretched, endless. Ethan turned, trying to find the doorway behind him. It was gone. His stomach lurched. He wasn't in the basement anymore. The thumping sound was everywhere now. Not echoing, not distant, inside his own skull. It matched his heartbeat. It was his heartbeat. Then a whisper, not from behind him, not from around him, from within him. Welcome home. Ethan's breath caught. The darkness in front of him shifted. Something moved. No, not moved. Formed. Shapes, distortions, things that shouldn't be able to exist. And then he saw it. Him. Standing a few feet away, a perfect reflection. Same height, same hair, same clothes. But the eyes. Hollow, black. Ethan's stomach twisted violently. He took a step back. The thing took a step forward. Its mouth curled into a grin. I've been waiting. The words weren't spoken. They were felt. Inside his own skull, inside his own bones. The thumping in his chest quickened. The air rippled. Ethan could barely breathe. His reflection stepped closer. The grin widened. Let me in. Ethan shook his head. No, his own voice laughed back at him. You're already inside. The darkness lurched. A pulling sensation wrapped around his skin, inside his veins, deep into his bones. Ethan screamed. And then everything collapsed. Silence. Then breath. Ethan's eyes shot open. His vision swam. The world tilted. He was sitting. His hands rested on something smooth polished. A table. His body froze. The dining room. He was sitting in the head chair. Ethan's pulse spiked. He turned his head. The house was normal again. Daylight streamed through the windows. The air smelled of dust and wood polish, like nothing had ever happened, but it had. He could still feel it. The red door, the other him, the voice in his bones. He tried to stand, but his body didn't move. His arms stayed still. His legs wouldn't respond. His throat locked. Panic clawed at his chest. His reflection in the glass cabinet across the room. It wasn't moving. It was watching. A grin split its face. The dining room light flickered, and then the thumping started again. Chapter 10. The Vanishing. The thumping wouldn't stop. Ethan sat frozen in the head chair at the dining room table, his hands resting on the smooth wooden surface. He tried to move, to scream, to do anything, but his body wouldn't obey, because it wasn't his anymore. His reflection in the glass cabinet across the room was still grinning. The house was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The air smelled of wood polish and dust. It was normal. Except he wasn't in control. And something else was. Noah tapped the steering wheel, frowning as he glanced at his phone. Ethan wasn't answering. He hadn't been since last night. And after what they'd found in the library archives, after what Lillian had said, Noah had a bad feeling. He pulled into Ethan's driveway, killing the engine. The house was still. But something felt off. A strange, nagging wrongness. Noah stepped out of the car. Ethan? No answer. He knocked on the door. Still nothing. His pulse quickened. He reached for the handle and it swung open on its own. Noah hesitated. Everything in him screamed to leave, but he stepped inside. Inside the house was quiet. Too quiet. Noah swallowed hard. Ethan? No response. He moved cautiously down the hallway. The air was thick, heavy. Something about it felt wrong. He reached the dining room and froze. Ethan was sitting at the head of the table, staring straight ahead, not blinking, not moving, just sitting. Something in Noah's gut twisted. Ethan? Slowly, Ethan turned his head. His eyes met Noah's, and Noah felt ice crawl up his spine, because something was wrong with them. The pupils were too dark, too deep, like staring into something empty. Ethan smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was too wide, too perfect, like a mask. Hey, man, Ethan said, his voice light, casual. Didn't hear you come in. Noah's heart pounded. He forced a chuckle. Yeah, sorry, your door was open. You good? Ethan's head tilted slightly. His smile didn't fade. Never better. Something in Noah's gut screamed. He took a slow step forward. The air felt wrong, like the house was holding its breath. Noah swallowed hard. You, missed work today. Ethan blinked once, slowly. Oh, he said nothing else. Just stared. Noah glanced toward the kitchen, his pulse hammering. He needed to leave, now. But then he noticed the basement door was open, just slightly, a dark gap leading down into the shadows, and suddenly his stomach dropped. He looked back at Ethan. Hey, man, Noah forced a chuckle. If you're good, I'll just... Ethan stood up. Noah tensed. Ethan was smiling wider now. "You don't have to go," he said softly. His voice was wrong. Noah's breath hitched, because Ethan wasn't blinking. Not once. Not at all. Something in his gut snapped. Noah took a step back. Ethan took a step forward. Noah's body locked, because when Ethan said his name, it wasn't his voice anymore. It was Noah's. Noah's mouth went dry. His chest tightened. He took another step back, nearly tripping over himself. Ethan tilted his head, and then the lights flickered. Noah's breath came fast, shallow. His eyes darted toward the glass cabinet, and his blood ran cold, because in the reflection, Ethan wasn't standing there. Something else was, tall, twisted, grinning. Noah's body finally obeyed. He ran. His feet slammed against the hardwood floor. He bolted for the front door, lungs burning, every nerve in his body screaming. He hit the porch, practically falling down the steps, and scrambled into his car. His hands shook as he fumbled for the keys. Thump. Noah gasped. Thump, thump. The sound was coming from the house. Noah's vision blurred. Through the windshield, he saw Ethan standing on the porch, staring at him, still smiling. But his mouth didn't move. And yet, Noah heard his voice, from inside his own head. "See you soon." Noah's breath hitched. He slammed the car into reverse, peeling out of the driveway, heart hammering in his chest. He didn't look back, couldn't, because deep in his bones he knew. That wasn't Ethan anymore. The next owner, Mark Reynolds, turned the key in the lock, pushing the front door open. The house smelled like dust and polish. Empty. Waiting. His wife, Julia, stepped in behind him, holding their toddler. "I still can't believe we got this place for so cheap." Mark nodded, glancing around. "Feels weirdly untouched." The realtor had said the previous owner, Ethan Grayson, had moved out years ago. No one in town talked much about him, or why the house had sat empty for so long. Julia sighed. "It's a fresh start, babe. New town, new house." Mark forced a smile. "Yeah." They walked inside. Their son, Luke, squirmed in Julia's arms. She set him down, letting him wander. He toddled into the dining room. Mark followed, and froze. The chair at the head of the table was pulled back, like someone had just been sitting there. A chill crawled up his spine. "Hey, Julia?" His wife's voice floated in from the hallway. "Yeah?" Mark swallowed. "Did you move this chair?" Silence. Then, from the dining room, thump. Mark whipped around. Luke stood by the table, staring up at the chair. His tiny hand lifted, as if someone was holding it. A shadow flickered across the glass cabinet. Mark's chest tightened. "Luke, buddy?" His son turned and smiled, a grin too wide, too perfect. Mark's stomach plummeted, because in that moment, Luke's eyes weren't his own. They were black. In a house where every shadow tells a story, the past awakens to claim its next victim. The sinister legacy of the red door blurs the line between reflection and reality. Once you cross the threshold, there is no escaping the darkness that waits inside.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.